Hello everyone, my name is Jeff Stinson and we're here to talk about my book, A Practical Guide to Human Resources Management. And today we're going to talk about Chapter 10, which is how to discipline and fire employees. This is obviously something nobody likes to do, but unfortunately there will be times when you do need to do it. So we're going to talk about two different kinds of problem employees today. The first is what I'll call performance issues. This is an employee that's otherwise a good employee but just simply can't do the job. And I'm going to also talk about what I'll call dysfunctional employees, and these are employees that do dysfunctional things such as theft or threatening other employees, using drugs or alcohol on the job, sexually harassing people, etc. So let's step back for a minute and talk about performance. Performance involves really the ability to do the job, and you need to figure out whether they in fact can do the job. So I'm going to refer again to the table we used in the last YouTube video, the willingness and able table. And again, on the left is the ability scale, and at the bottom is the willingness scale. And again, quadrant A is the kind of employee who is unwilling to do the job but has the ability, and they're really our focus today, and those are the people we need to counsel. So coaching versus counseling, these are two different concepts that I want to talk about briefly. Coaching is the process of pointing out the things that employees do well as not so well. And let's look for a second at this chart and see what some of the characteristics of a good coach are. I think all of us have seen this in managers we've worked for that we thought were very good and have helped us grow professionally. Counseling, however, occurs when coaching fails and actually begins that formal documentation process that will either lead to improved performance or unfortunately will lead to termination. So when we're looking at performance, we have to ask ourselves one very important question. Has the employee got a proven ability to do the job? If the answer is yes, we move on to the counseling. If the answer is no, then we want to consider coaching or perhaps more training, which we talked about in the last video. So this brings us to the idea of progressive discipline, which is simply the process of dealing with an employee's failure to perform and trying to change that behavior, and it's a multi-step approach. The first step is, again, coaching, which we talked about, and that's a quick, what I'll call a course correction, for lack of a better term, that hopefully gets the employee back on track. The second is a counseling session, and this is sometimes called a documented verbal warning, and the reason it's called that is because you're actually writing down what you're telling them. After that, we would have a written warning, which is very much like a counseling session, except that it is much more formal. And what I would suggest that you do during these kind of warnings is invite the employee to help bring you solutions to the problem. That helps them get more involved in the problem and helps them buy more into the solution. The second to last step of the progressive discipline process is what I call a day of reflection. Now, many of you are familiar with the old 3-day suspensions or the final written warnings. I prefer a day of reflection. The reason for that is it gives the employee a day off with pay to think about whether this is the right environment for them. We don't all succeed in every environment, so it may be they're a very good employee in another company, but maybe just not in yours. So they're expected to return the next day with either a letter of commitment or a letter of resignation. Assuming that that doesn't work, the final step, of course, is the termination. I've given you here on screen a copy of a form we use, which is a behavior modification form. And the key to this form is making sure the employee comes up to the solution to their problem instead of you giving them the solution to the problem. So ultimately, we have to terminate the employee, so let me give you a quick checklist here. Firing is never easy, and here are some things that you should consider. First of all, don't debate or negotiate. Once the decision is made, stick to your guns. This is it. It should never be more than a 10 or 15-minute conversation. If it goes longer than that, then I don't think we've done a very good job of coaching and counseling. Never lose your temper, and that's not always easy to do, but always try and take the high ground, no matter how angry you might get. Tackle disciplinary action head on. Don't avoid it, because the problem isn't going to get any better, and in all likelihood it's going to get worse. Never play therapist or counselor, unless of course you are a therapist or counselor, because it's not your job to figure out why they're having this problem. Your job is to deal with performance. Then there are the obvious things, right? Shut down the computer systems, the email accounts, get their keys, cell phone, etc. But please don't shut down the computer system until after you've had the termination conversation with them, because that could be pretty embarrassing. And, of course, have all the required paperwork ready. This would be final paychecks if that's required in your state, COBRA paperwork, that sort of thing. Treat the employees respectfully, no matter what your personal feelings might be. And if you think for any reason that you might be in danger, always err on the side of caution, and please alert law enforcement, particularly if you see some of these warning signs. Somebody with obviously a history of violence, threatening kinds of behavior, excessive kinds of behavior, increase in their personal stress you've witnessed recently, some negative personality characteristics. And then, of course, always remember the survivors, if you will. These are the ones that will watch their teammate leave, and they may need to grieve that to some extent. Even if you don't believe they like that person, they're still going to be upset. And some final thoughts. Termination and progressive discipline are never easy to do, but putting off the problem and putting off the solution may in fact make other employees think less of you as a result. Again, my book is called A Practical Guide to Human Resources Management. It's available on Amazon as well as Barnes & Noble. Thank you very much.